Kess pushed her food cart through the narrow corridor of Stellar's Rest Diner with practiced movements. Her prosthetic leg made soft mechanical sounds with each step, a rhythm she had grown used to hearing every single day for the past 3 years. The diner floated on the edge of Kepler Station, a place where merchants, traders, and spacers stopped to eat cheap food and drink cheaper coffee. It was not a fancy place. The walls were gray metal. The lights flickered sometimes. But it was a job and Kess needed work. She had worked at Stellar's Rest for 8 months now. The owner, a tired man named Vincent, did not care much about anything except money. He hired Kess because she asked for low wages. He did not want to hear about her disability or her problems. He just wanted her to serve food and keep her head down. Kess was good at keeping her head down. The lunch rush had started 30 minutes ago. The diner was half full. Most customers were regular spacers who barely noticed Kess existed. But 3 new customers sat in booth 7 near the back window. They were different from the regular customers. They wore expensive clothes that shimmered with some kind of technology. Their bodies looked too perfect, too smooth. They were Valorians, an alien species known throughout the galaxy for being proud and mean. They had more money than anyone Kess knew. They also had more attitude. Kess noticed them the moment they walked in. They had laughed loud and looked around the diner like it was beneath them. One of them, a tall Valorian with blue skin and golden eyes, had pointed at Kess and made a comment to his friends. They all laughed. Kess felt her stomach drop, but she tried to ignore them. She had learned that ignoring mean people was sometimes the best defense. She approached their table with her notepad. Her heart was beating faster than normal. The 3 Valorians stared at her with expressions that looked like they had just smelled something bad. The tall one spoke first. His voice was cold and sharp. "What is this thing?" he asked his friends, not looking at Kess but pointing at her with one long finger. "Is it some kind of servant android? No, wait, I think it is actually alive. How sad. A crippled lizard. How pathetic." Kess felt her face become hot. She had heard mean words before, but hearing them still hurt. She kept her voice calm and professional. "What would you like to order?" she asked quietly. "We would like you to go away and send someone normal to take our order," the second Valorian said. He had red skin and cold silver eyes. "We do not want to look at disabled creatures while we eat. It ruins our appetite." The third Valorian, smaller than the others but with a meaner expression, laughed loudly. "Maybe it will fall over and hurt itself more. That would be funny. Come on, do something funny for us, little disabled thing." Kess wanted to leave. She wanted to walk away and never come back. But she needed this job. She needed the money. So she stood there and waited for them to tell her what they wanted to eat. They ordered expensive meals and expensive wine. They made jokes about her the whole time. They used words that were cruel and made her feel small. She brought their food 20 minutes later. The diner was now very busy. Almost every table was full. The noise level was high. People were talking and eating and not paying attention to anything else. Kess carefully balanced the plates on her left arm. Her prosthetic leg was aching today. It always ached on days when she worked extra hours. She moved slowly toward booth 7, trying to be very careful. She reached the first plate toward the tall Valorian with blue skin. That is when her prosthetic leg caught the edge of the table leg. It was not a big accident. It was small. But it was enough. The motion made her arm jerk. The drink she was holding splashed across the table. It did not spill on anyone. It did not even spill on the food. It just went on the empty part of the table. Any other customer would have said sorry and forgotten about it. But Valorians were not like other customers. "You stupid, clumsy thing," the tall one screamed, jumping up from his seat. "You ruined everything. You are useless and pathetic." "I apologize," Kess said, trying to stay calm. "I can clean that up for you. I can bring new drinks." But the Valorian was not listening. He stood up and looked down at her with pure anger in his golden eyes. The other 2 Valorians also stood up. They moved around her like hunters closing in on prey. Kess felt scared. She tried to step back, but the table was in the way. "You need to learn some respect, you disabled freak," the red-skinned Valorian hissed. What happened next was fast and terrible. The tall Valorian raised his hand and brought it down hard across Kess's face. The sound of the slap was loud. She felt her head snap to the side. Pain exploded across her cheek. Before she could even understand what was happening, the second Valorian pushed her from behind. She lost her balance. Her prosthetic leg could not hold her weight on the slippery floor. She fell down hard onto the ground. The Valorians kept going. They kicked at her. They called her horrible names. They laughed like this was the funniest thing they had seen all week. Other customers in the diner looked over but did not do anything. Nobody helped. Nobody even said anything. Vincent, the diner owner, stayed behind the counter and looked away. Finally, the Valorians stopped. They threw money on the table, not even enough to cover their bill, and walked out laughing. They did not care about the girl bleeding on the floor. They did not care about anything except their own amusement. They were gone in seconds. Kes lay on the cold metal floor of the diner, tasting blood in her mouth. Nobody came to help her. Nobody even asked if she was okay. The only person who came was Emma from the kitchen. Emma helped her up slowly and brought her to the back room. As Kes sat there trying not to cry, she did not know that her life was about to change. She did not know that in exactly 1 hour, 3 human mechanics would walk into this same diner and change everything forever. Kes sat in the back room of Stellar's Rest Diner with a cold compress against her swollen cheek. Emma, the kitchen worker, had brought her ice wrapped in cloth. The ice felt good against the pain, but it could not make the shame go away. She kept replaying what happened over and over in her mind. The slaps, the kicks, the laughter, the way everyone had simply ignored her suffering. Emma sat across from her on an old wooden chair. She was a kind woman, maybe 50 years old, with gray hair and gentle eyes. She had worked at the diner for 5 years. She had seen many bad things happen, but she still seemed to care about people. That was rare. "You should report this to the station authorities," Emma said, shaking her head. "Those Valorians should be arrested. What they did was assault. It is a crime." Kes shook her head slowly. "Vincent will not want trouble. He will just fire me. And the authorities will not care. Valorians are rich. They have lawyers and connections. I am nothing. Nobody will help me." Emma looked sad but did not argue. She knew Kes was probably right. The galaxy was not fair. Rich aliens got away with things that poor aliens did not. That was just how things worked. The diner slowly emptied as the lunch rush ended. The clock on the wall showed 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Only a few customers remained scattered at different tables. Most were spacers drinking coffee and reading news on their personal screens. The noise level dropped. The diner became quiet and almost peaceful. It was hard to believe that violence had happened here just an hour ago. Kes was thinking about going home when she heard the diner door open. 3 people walked in together. They were humans. Kes could tell immediately because humans looked different from most alien species. They had round ears. Their skin was smooth without scales or bumps. Their bodies looked normal and practical, not augmented with expensive technology like the Valorians. The 3 humans were dressed in work clothes. They wore blue uniforms with patches that said, "Ironwood," on the chest. They looked tired and hungry, like people who had been working hard all day. They sat down at a booth near the front window without any ceremony. They did not look fancy or important. But there was something about them that felt solid and real, like they actually belonged somewhere, unlike the Valorians who had acted like they were too good for everything around them. The tall one was a woman with short black hair and dark eyes. Her name tag said, Captain Alice Chin. She had a strong face and moved with confidence. The second human was a man with red hair and a beard. His name tag said David. The third was a younger woman with blonde hair tied back in a tight braid. Her name tag said Emma. Wait, not the same Emma who worked in the kitchen. A different Emma. These 3 humans sat down and immediately started looking at the menu. They did not seem to notice Kes sitting in the back room with a bruised face. They seemed like normal customers just wanting food. But something about them made Kes feel different. Something about the way they carried themselves. Something about the way they looked at the world around them, like they actually understood what was happening. Vincent came out from behind the counter and approached their booth. He had a fake smile on his face. He only smiled like that for customers who looked like they had money. These humans did not look rich, but Vincent was hoping anyway. The 3 humans ordered food and coffee. Captain Alice asked for extra coffee. David asked for the biggest sandwich on the menu. The other Emma asked for soup and bread. While they waited for their food, something strange happened. One of the regular customers, an old spacer named Henry, pointed toward the back room where Kes was sitting. He was saying something to Captain Alice. Kes could not hear what he was saying from where she sat, but she could see Captain Alice's expression change. She was listening carefully. Her dark eyes became serious. She looked toward the back room, trying to see into the shadows where Kes was hiding. Henry was telling her what had happened. Kes realized this with a sudden feeling of panic and embarrassment. She did not want anyone to know. She did not want sympathy or pity. But it was too late. Captain Alice was already looking in her direction. The captain stood up from the booth. She said something to David and the other Emma. They both looked serious too. Alice walked toward the back room slowly. Kes felt her heart start beating faster. What did this human woman want? Was she going to say something mean too? Were all humans mean like the Valorians? Alice appeared in the doorway of the back room. She looked at Kess with a direct stare. Her eyes were not cruel or mean. They were just observant. She saw Kess's bruised cheek. She saw the ice compress. She understood immediately what had happened. Those were Valorians who did this, right? Alice asked, her voice steady and calm. Kess nodded slowly, not sure how to respond. Alice turned to look at Emma in the kitchen. When did they leave? About an hour ago, Emma answered from where she stood by the stove. Alice nodded once, a small movement that seemed to mean something important. She looked back at Kess. What is your name, Dragonkin? Kess, she answered quietly. I am Captain Alice Chin. I command the salvage ship Ironwood. Those 3 men who hurt you violated station law. They committed assault against you. That is a crime regardless of who they are or how much money they have. Alice paused and her expression became harder. Where did they go? Kess did not know where they went. But something about the way Captain Alice asked the question made Kess feel like maybe, just maybe, someone actually cared about what had happened to her. Something about the way this human woman looked at her made Kess feel like she was not alone anymore. For the first time in an hour, Kess felt a small spark of hope ignite somewhere deep inside her chest. Captain Alice Chin sat back down at her booth with David and the other Emma. But she was not thinking about the food anymore. She was thinking about 3 Valerian merchants who had beaten a disabled girl in a public diner while everyone watched and did nothing. That kind of injustice made her angry in a way that most things did not. Humans had a particular talent for getting angry about bullies. It was something that came from their history. It came from thousands of years of standing up against people who thought they were better than everyone else. Those 3 Valorians are not going to get away with this, Alice said quietly to her crew. Not on my watch. David leaned forward. He had worked with Alice for 7 years. He knew what that expression on her face meant. It meant someone was about to have a very bad day. What do you want to do? He asked. We find them, Alice said simply. We find them and we make them answer for what they did. The other Emma, whose full name was Emma Rodriguez, smiled slightly. She was the tech expert of their team. If Alice wanted information, Emma could find it. Emma could hack into almost any system if she had enough time and motivation. And right now she had both. I can search the station database, Emma said. Those Valorians will have rooms booked somewhere. They will have used their credit cards. They will have left digital traces everywhere. Alice nodded. After they finished eating quickly, the 3 humans made their way to the station's public communication hub. The hub was a large room filled with computer terminals where spacers could access the station's networks. Emma sat down at one of the terminals and started typing. Her fingers moved fast across the keyboard. Lines of code and data scrolled across the screen in front of her. Got them, Emma said after about 10 minutes of searching. 3 Valerian merchants registered at the Celestial Heights Hotel in the Upper District. The hotel is expensive. It is very exclusive. Only wealthy people stay there. David looked at the information on the screen. They are staying in the penthouse suite. Of course they are. Rich aliens always go for the most expensive rooms. That is not all, Emma continued, her eyes scanning more data. I found their financial records. These 3 have been moving money around in very suspicious ways. Large transfers to hidden accounts. Payments to shell companies. This looks like serious tax evasion. This looks like money laundering. Alice felt something click into place in her mind. These Valorians were not just violent bullies. They were criminals. They were breaking galactic trade laws and probably station laws too. This made things easier in some ways. It gave them more ammunition. Can you access the station's surveillance cameras? Alice asked. Emma nodded and kept typing. More screens opened. More data appeared. Emma was working in a zone now, totally focused. After a few more minutes she smiled. I have access to the public surveillance system. I can pull footage from the diner. I can see everything that happened. Within minutes, video appeared on the screen. It showed the moment the Valorians attacked Cass. It showed them slapping her. It showed them pushing her to the ground. It showed them kicking her while she lay helpless. It showed everything. It also showed that nobody in the diner had done anything to help. Vincent had turned away. The other customers had ignored it. Only the violence was clear and obvious. This is good evidence, Alice said, watching the footage. But we need more. We need to make sure these 3 cannot escape justice by using their money and connections. David pulled out his personal communication device. I know someone in the station authority office. His name is Captain Marcus. He owes me a favor. I helped him fix his ship's engine system 2 years ago. He said if I ever needed anything I should ask. Alice smiled. This was why she liked having a good crew. They had connections everywhere. They had done favors for people all over the galaxy. Now those favors were going to come in handy. David made the communication call to Captain Marcus. He explained the situation. He told Marcus about the assault. He told Marcus about the surveillance footage. He told Marcus about the suspicious financial records. Captain Marcus listened carefully. When David finished, Marcus agreed to meet with them privately in 1 hour at a secure location. While they waited, Emma continued searching. She dug deeper into the Valorians' financial records. She found evidence of tax evasion going back 5 years. She found fake invoices and false business registrations. She found proof that these 3 Valorians had stolen millions of credits from legitimate traders. This is incredible, Emma said, shaking her head. These 3 are not just bullies and violent criminals. They are sophisticated criminals. They have been stealing money and hiding it in secret accounts. If the authorities knew about this, they would face serious jail time. They would lose their trading licenses. They would be ruined. Alice nodded. That is exactly what is going to happen. But we need to do this carefully. We need to make sure the evidence is solid. We need to make sure there is no way for them to escape or use their connections to make this go away. David looked at Alice with understanding. You want to do this the human way. Gather the evidence. Present the facts. Let the system work. Exactly, Alice said. Humans are good at this. We understand how to use systems and information and documentation. We are good at being smart about justice. We do not need to be the strongest or the fastest. We just need to be prepared. 2 hours later, they met with Captain Marcus in a private room at the station security office. Alice showed him the surveillance footage. Emma showed him the financial records. David explained the assault from start to finish. Captain Marcus watched everything carefully. His expression became darker as he understood what had happened. This is serious, Marcus said when they finished. These 3 have been under investigation for other crimes. We suspected them of illegal activity, but we did not have solid proof. Now you have given me exactly what I need. I am going to issue warrants immediately. I am going to have them arrested tonight. As they left the security office, Alice thought about Kes sitting in that diner with a bruised face. By tomorrow morning, those Valorians would be in custody. By next week they would be facing serious charges. Justice would not be instant, but it would be certain. And for the first time in her life, Kes would see that sometimes, someone actually did care enough to fight for what was right. The 3 Valorian merchants did not see the trap closing around them. They were too confident. They were too used to using their money and connections to escape consequences. They spent the evening in their penthouse suite, drinking expensive wine and laughing about the disabled girl they had beaten. They did not know that station authorities were gathering evidence against them. They did not know that their financial crimes were being exposed. They did not know that their freedom was measured in hours, not days. At midnight, security officers arrived at the Celestial Heights Hotel. They had warrants signed by Captain Marcus himself. The warrants authorized them to arrest the 3 Valorians for assault, battery, and financial crimes. The officers entered the penthouse suite and found the 3 merchants sleeping. They woke up to the sound of station security surrounding their beds. Their faces turned pale when they realized what was happening. You are under arrest for assault, battery, and violation of galactic trade laws, the lead officer said, reading them their rights. The 3 Valorians tried to protest. They tried to call their lawyers. They tried to use their money to negotiate their way out of the situation. But this time, none of their usual tricks worked. The evidence was too strong. The charges were too serious. By morning, the news had spread across Kepler Station like wildfire. The arrest of 3 wealthy Valorian merchants was big news. People talked about it at breakfast. They shared stories about it on communication networks. The local news station broadcast the story repeatedly. They showed the surveillance footage of the assault. They showed pictures of the 3 Valorians being led away in security restraints. They explained the charges against them. Alice made sure that Kes saw the news. She went back to Stellar's Rest Diner in the morning with David and Emma. Kes was working her regular shift, though her face was still bruised and painful. When Captain Alice walked in, Kes looked up from the table she was cleaning. Her eyes widened when she saw the captain's expression. Alice gestured for Kes to sit down with them at a booth. Turn on the news, Alice said to Vincent behind the counter. Channel 7. Vincent looked confused, but he switched the diner's wall screen to Channel 7. The news was already showing the story. There was footage of the 3 Valorians being arrested. There was footage of them being taken to the station detention facility. A news reporter was explaining their crimes to the public. "Those 3 men who attacked you have been arrested," Alice said to Kes. "They are facing serious charges: assault, battery, tax evasion, money laundering, financial fraud. They will face trial and they will likely go to prison for many years." Kes stared at the screen in shock. She could not believe what she was seeing. The Valorians looked scared now. They looked small and powerless. They were handcuffed and being escorted by security officers. They were not laughing anymore. They were not acting superior anymore. But the story did not end there. Over the next few days, more information came out. Emma's investigation had uncovered so much financial crime that the authorities launched a wider investigation into the 3 Valorians' business operations. They discovered that these 3 had stolen millions of credits from honest traders. They had used fake invoices and false business registrations to hide their crimes. They had corrupted officials on at least 2 other stations to help them escape detection. The Valorians tried to hire expensive lawyers. They tried to negotiate deals. They tried to make the charges go away by offering money to the authorities. But Captain Marcus and the station security team were not interested in deals. They had solid evidence, and they intended to prosecute these criminals fully. What surprised Kes the most was how the human mechanics had done all of this. They had not used violence or threats. They had not fought the Valorians physically. Instead, they had used intelligence and preparation and knowledge of how systems worked. They had gathered evidence carefully. They had documented everything. They had presented facts to the authorities and let the legal system do its job. One afternoon, a week after the arrests, Alice came back to the diner to speak with Kes privately. They sat in the back room where Kes had cried after the assault. "The trial will begin in 3 weeks, Alice told her. "You will need to testify about what happened to you. You will need to tell the court exactly what those 3 men did. Are you ready to do that?" Kes felt nervous about the idea of testifying. But she also felt something else. She felt brave. She felt like maybe her story mattered. She felt like maybe, finally, someone was listening to her. "I will testify," Kes said quietly. "I will tell them everything." Alice smiled and placed a document on the table in front of Kes. It was a contract. It was a job offer from the salvage ship Ironwood. The job was for a navigator position. The pay was 3 times what Kes made at the diner. The contract included full medical benefits, disability accommodations, and paid time off. The contract also included something else. It included respect. It included dignity. It included the promise that Kes would be treated as a valued member of a team. "This is for you," Alice said. "When this trial is over, when you are ready, I want you to join my crew. We could use someone smart and tough like you. Someone who understands what it means to keep fighting even when things are difficult." Kes looked at the contract in disbelief. A week ago, she had been beaten in a diner while everyone ignored her suffering. Now she was being offered a real job with real opportunity. She was being offered a chance to leave Stellar's Rest behind and become part of something bigger. "Thank you," Kes said, her voice shaking with emotion. "Thank you for caring. Thank you for helping me." Alice stood up and placed a hand on Kes's shoulder. "That is what humans do," she said simply. "We stand up for people who cannot stand up for themselves. We make bullies answer for what they have done. We believe that everyone deserves justice and dignity. Those 3 Valorians are going to learn that lesson the hard way. And you are going to be free from them forever." The trial lasted 2 weeks. Kes sat in the witness chair in the courthouse on Kepler Station and told her story to the judge and the jury. She described the assault in detail. She explained how the Valorians had mocked her disability. She described the feeling of being slapped and kicked while people around her did nothing to help. The 3 Valorians sat across the room looking angry and scared. Their expensive lawyers tried to argue that Kes had provoked them. They tried to say that she had been clumsy and deserved what happened. But the evidence was too strong. The surveillance footage showed everything clearly. There was no provocation. There was only violence against a defenseless person. The judge listened carefully to everything. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours before returning with a verdict. Guilty on all counts. The 3 Valorians were found guilty of assault, battery, and financial crimes. The judge sentenced them to 8 years in station prison with mandatory financial restitution to their victims. The Valorians would have to pay back all the money they had stolen. They would also have to pay compensation to Kes for her injuries and suffering. When the verdict was announced, Kes felt something break open inside her chest. It was not anger breaking open. It was relief. It was justice. It was the knowledge that she had been heard. She had been believed. The system had worked, and these 3 men would face consequences for what they had done. Alice sat in the courtroom watching Kess's face as the verdict was read. She could see the moment when Kess understood that her suffering had meant something, that her testimony had mattered, that she was not powerless anymore. After the trial, Kess had one final shift at Stellar's Rest Diner. She cleaned tables and served coffee for the last time. Vincent asked her why she was leaving. She told him about the job offer from Captain Alice. Vincent nodded without much emotion. He was already looking for a replacement server. That was how business worked. People came and went. Nobody was irreplaceable. But the other customers were different. Henry, the old spacer who had told Captain Alice what happened, came up to Kess as she worked. He placed a generous tip on the table and told her that she was braver than most people he knew. Emma from the kitchen hugged Kess tightly and told her to never stop fighting for herself. Even some of the regular customers who had ignored the assault came up to apologize. They said they should have helped. They said they were sorry for their cowardice. Kess accepted their apologies, but she knew the truth. They had made a choice in that moment. They had chosen to look away. That choice would stay with them forever. The day Kess joined the Ironwood was clear and bright. The salvage ship was docked at Station Bay 7. It was smaller than Kess had expected. It was not fancy or impressive. It was practical and solid, built for work rather than for show. But there was something beautiful about its simplicity. There was something honest about a ship designed to fix broken things rather than to impress people with wealth. Captain Alice stood at the entrance to the ship with David and Emma. They smiled when they saw Kess approaching with her few belongings packed into a single bag. That was all she owned in the world. That was all she needed to start over. "Welcome aboard, Kess," Alice said, extending her hand. Kess shook it firmly. Alice's grip was strong and confident. It communicated safety and trust. David helped Kess bring her belongings to her quarters. The room was small but clean. It had a bed, a storage locker, and a window that looked out toward the station. There was also a medical brace on the wall, specialized equipment for Kess's prosthetic leg. Alice had made sure her new crew member would have everything she needed. Emma showed Kess around the ship. The navigation station was clean and well organized. The computer systems were advanced but not overly complicated. Emma explained that Kess would be responsible for plotting their course through space, calculating jumps to hyperspace, and managing the ship's navigation data. It was important work. It required intelligence and precision and attention to detail. It was the kind of work that mattered. That evening, the Ironwood prepared for departure. The crew gathered in the bridge as the ship's engines powered up. Kess sat at the navigation station and felt her heart beating with excitement and nervousness. She had never left Kepler Station before. She had never traveled to other worlds. She had spent her whole life in one place, working a job that treated her as less than human. Alice gave the order to disengage from the docking clamp. The ship shuddered slightly as it separated from the station. The bay doors began to open, revealing the vast darkness of space beyond. Kess watched the stars appear in the viewport. They looked like diamonds scattered across black velvet. They looked like infinite possibility. "Plot our course for the Andromeda sector," Alice commanded, her voice confident and clear. "Let us see what we can find out there." Kess's fingers flew across the navigation console. She entered the coordinates. She calculated the route through space. She prepared the hyperspace jump. As she worked, she realized that she was no longer afraid. She was no longer small or powerless. She was part of a team now. She was part of something that mattered. The Ironwood jumped to hyperspace. Reality twisted and warped around them. For a moment, everything was light and color and sensation beyond normal perception. Then, suddenly, they were somewhere else entirely. They were among distant stars that Kess had never seen before. They were traveling toward adventure and purpose and a future that had not been written yet. Kess looked around the bridge of the Ironwood. She saw Alice studying the star charts. She saw David checking the ship systems. She saw Emma monitoring communications. She saw humans who had chosen to stand up against injustice. She saw humans who had believed that one small Dragon King girl was worth fighting for. "Thank you," Kess said quietly to the bridge. "Thank you for saving me." Alice turned and looked at Kess with a smile. "That is what we do," she said. "We take care of our own. We stand up for people who cannot stand up for themselves. We believe that everyone deserves a chance to be better than their circumstances. You have that chance now, Kess. Make the most of it." As the Ironwood continued its journey through space, Kess understood that her life had changed forever. She was no longer a disabled server at a diner on a space station. She was a navigator for a salvage ship. She was part of a crew. She was free. And that freedom had come because humans refused to accept injustice. Humans had gathered evidence and worked the system and fought through proper channels until justice was served.